The dock was alive that morning. Engines roaring, ropes slapping against polished hulls. The scent of diesel and salt heavy in the air. Gulls screamed overhead as I stepped out of the cab, clutching my small suitcase like it was all I had left. And then I saw them. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My Uncle Greg stood with his arms folded near the boarding area, surrounded by my cousins and a handful of men in tailored suits. Their laughter carried over the crashing waves. Well, look who washed up, Greg said with a grin sharp enough to cut glass. You're here to wave goodbye, not bored, sweetheart. The others chuckled, shaking their heads like it was some kind of family tradition to mock me. My cousin Natalie leaned in, whispering just loud enough. Guess someone didn't get the memo. This trip's for actual shareholders. My jaw tightened. I'd promised myself I wouldn't react. Not today. Greg glanced at my worn-out blazer and scuffed shoes, his smirk deepening. Still playing dress-up in your bargain rack wardrobe? Honey, this is a yacht club, not a charity pier. His words hit harder than they should have, maybe because for years I'd let them. After my father died, Greg had taken over his shipping company, leaving me with nothing but a stack of condolences and an eviction notice. He told everyone I was too emotional to handle business, too soft to survive the real world, and for a while he was right. But not anymore. A deep rumble grew behind me, the sound of a massive engine starting up. Heads turned across the dock. A sleek white yacht glided into view, the sunlight bouncing off its chrome edges like fire. Its name, the Seraphine, shimmered in silver letters across the bow. Crew members in Navy uniforms lined the deck, crisp and silent, and walking down the ramp was a man in a captain's hat, posture straight, expression calm. The laughter around me faltered. Greg frowned. What's this? Who's pulling that thing in? The captain stopped in front of me and removed his cap. Miss Lily Morgan. I met his eyes. That's me. He nodded once, firm and respectful. Captain Harris. Ma'am, your yacht is fully fueled and prepared. Permission to escort you aboard. The dock fell silent. Greg blinked, his smirk collapsing. Her what? The captain didn't even look at him. Your yacht, ma'am. A stunned murmur spread through the crowd. Natalie let out a small, confused laugh that died in her throat. Greg's business partners exchanged uneasy looks. I took a slow breath, steady, deliberate, then stepped past Greg. You heard the man. He stumbled forward. Wait a minute, your yacht. Since when? I turned slightly, meeting his eyes with a calmness that only comes from knowing the game is already over since the transfer went through last week. You should really pay attention to what you sign when you're celebrating too hard. Greg's face drained of color. You tricked me. No, I said softly. I just stopped letting you trick me. The captain gestured toward the yacht. Ma'am, your crew is ready. Thank you, I said and stepped forward. My heels clicked against the wooden dock, each sound echoing through the silence Greg had left behind. As I reached the ramp, I glanced back. He stood frozen, the powerful uncle who once controlled everything, now looking small and lost. You always said I didn't belong here, I said, voice calm but cutting. Maybe you were right. I don't belong with you. Then I turned and walked up the ramp, suitcase in hand, the sunlight catching the gold band on my wrist, the same one Dad had given me before he died, engraved with the words for the one who will bring it home. The engines roared louder, waves surging beneath us as the yacht began to move. The dock started shrinking behind me. Greg, Natalie, all of them just fading figures now. Captain Harris approached again. Where to, Miss Morgan? I looked toward the horizon where the sky melted into sea. Forward, I said quietly, full speed ahead. The yacht surged, slicing through the water, and as the spray hit my face, I realized for the first time in years I wasn't running from my past. I was sailing straight through it. By the time the Seraphine cut through the open water, my phone was already vibrating non-stop. Missed calls, messages, emails, all from Greg. I let them pile up, standing on the deck, the ocean wind whipping through my hair. I could still see his face in my mind. That moment his confidence cracked, that tiny flicker of fear behind the arrogance. I'd waited years to see it, and yet, beneath the satisfaction, there was something else, a quiet ache. Maybe it was because he was family, or maybe because it reminded me how long I'd lived under their shadow. The captain's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Ma'am, we're clear of the harbor. Would you like to review the itinerary?" "Not yet," I said. "Bring me the satellite phone." He nodded and walked off. When I finally answered Greg's call, his voice came through sharp, trembling with rage. "You think this is funny, Lily? You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" "I didn't humiliate you," I said evenly. "You did that yourself. You tricked me into signing that transfer." "I didn't trick you," I cut in. "You were too busy celebrating your own ego to notice the fine print. The same arrogance that made you steal Dad's company made you lose it." He went silent for a moment, breathing hard. "You'll pay for this," I smiled faintly. "You said that when you fired me. How did that turn out?" Then I hung up. My reflection stared back at me in the glass window. Not the girl they used to mock, but someone sharper, stronger, unafraid to take back what was hers. Down below deck, I opened the safe, the one with the files my father had left hidden behind the old painting in our family home. It took years to piece them together. Contracts, stock ledgers, proof of Greg's forgery. But I didn't bring them to destroy him financially. I brought them because truth needed to surface, and tomorrow it would. At sunrise, a press conference was scheduled in the main harbor. I'd be stepping off the Seraphine, not as Greg's niece, but as the rightful CEO of Morgan Maritime Holdings, the company my father built, reclaimed by the daughter they threw aside. I spent the night reading through Dad's handwriting in the margins of old documents. Small notes like, "Always remember who you are. Never fight for revenge. Fight for what's right." It stung because somewhere along the line, I wasn't sure which one I was doing anymore. Just after midnight, the captain knocked softly. "Ma'am, we've got a call coming through. Anonymous source, put it through." The voice on the line was low. "Miss Morgan, you don't know me, but your uncle isn't done. He's meeting with investors tonight, trying to reclaim control of the board before your announcement." I gripped the phone. "Where?" "The Grand Harbor Hotel, conference room on the top floor." I exhaled slowly, looking out at the dark stretch of water ahead. Greg was predictable, desperate, but predictable. "Change course," I told Captain Harris. "Destination, Grand Harbor." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Understood, ma'am." As the Seraphine turned, the city lights began to rise in the distance, sharp, golden, and waiting. My heart thudded, not with fear, but purpose. Tomorrow wasn't just about revenge. It was about closure. And by dawn, Greg would finally understand what it meant to lose everything the same way he'd made me lose mine. By the time the Seraphine docked at Grand Harbor, the night had given way to a cold silver dawn. The skyline shimmered in the distance, towers of glass and ambition reflecting a city that never forgave weakness. I walked off the ramp with calm precision, dressed in a tailored navy suit, my hair tied back, my father's wrist, and hidden beneath the cuff. Captain Harris followed silently until I stopped him at the gate. "Stay here." "This part's mine." Inside the hotel, marble floors gleamed under my heels. People in suits passed by, rushing to early meetings, oblivious to the storm that was about to break on the top floor. As the elevator climbed, I rehearsed nothing. Words didn't need rehearsal when truth was this sharp. When the doors opened, the air smelled of coffee, arrogance, and desperation. Greg was there pacing beside a long glass table surrounded by board members and investors. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, his face tight with panic disguised as authority. The moment he saw me, his expression froze. "You shouldn't be here." "Funny," I said, walking forward. "That's what you told me at Dad's funeral." The room fell silent. The board members turned, unsure whether to intervene or watch. I placed a folder on the table, thick, worn, and heavy. "Everything you've done to this company, the shell accounts, the false signatures, the deals you made under Dad's name, it's all here." Greg's hand twitched toward the papers. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I said, my voice low but firm. "You've lied for years, but this time you signed the truth yourself." A board member, Mr. Alvarez, an older man with a cautious face, leaned forward. "Is that correct, Greg? These documents bear your name." Greg's jaw clenched. "She manipulated them. She's bitter because her father didn't leave her in charge." I let out a slow breath, steady, deliberate. "My father left everything in trust until I turned 30. You were supposed to protect it. Instead, you drained it. You turned his company into your personal playground." He slammed his fist against the table. "You think they'll believe you? You're just a kid who used to beg me for an allowance." The words echoed through the room. Arrogant, dismissive, desperate, perfect. Because in that silence afterward, every eye shifted from me to him. Every investor saw the cracks forming. I reached into my bag and placed a small recorder on the table. "Then maybe they'll believe you in your own words." I pressed play. His voice filled the room, slurred from one of his celebration nights. "She'll never find out. The papers are already signed. Her name's on them, but she doesn't know what they mean. By the time she does, I'll be untouchable." Greg went pale. His mouth opened, but no words came. "Dad trusted you," I said softly, "and you made me believe I wasn't enough to carry his name. But I learned. I studied. I built my own team. And while you were busy showing off your yachts and mistresses, I was building something real." Mr. Alvarez stood up. "This meeting is over. The board will convene privately. Miss Morgan, you'll be contacted for formal reinstatement procedures." I nodded once, then turned toward Greg. He looked at me, sweat on his forehead, eyes bloodshot, defeated. "You wanted power," I said quietly. "Now you'll see what it feels like when it's gone." As I walked toward the elevator, I could still hear muffled voices behind me, board members talking, Greg pleading, the sound of his empire crumbling. When the door slid shut, I finally exhaled. The city stretched out below, bathed in morning gold. For the first time, the reflection in the glass didn't look like a survivor. It looked like a leader, and as the elevator descended, one thought burned steady in my chest. I hadn't come to destroy him. I'd come to reclaim everything he thought I'd never earn. The next morning broke bright and windless. The kind of morning that felt like it belonged to someone who had fought hard to earn it. The city was awake, headlines already spreading across every finance page and news feed. Morgan Maritime returns to original air. Greg Morgan under investigation for fraud. I stood at the balcony of my hotel suite, coffee untouched beside me, watching the ocean stretch beyond the horizon. Down below, the Seraphine rocked gently at the private dock, its white hull gleaming beneath the rising sun. The world finally knew the truth, and Greg's empire was falling fast, his accounts frozen, his allies fleeing. His name, once the crown of our family, now dragged through the very mud he used to throw at me. But even with the victory headlines blazing, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. For years, revenge had been the rhythm of my life. Every decision, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, orbiting around the same goal, taking back what was stolen. And now that I had it, all I could think about was Dad's voice. "When you win, Lily, make sure it's not hate that's leading you." A soft knock pulled me out of thought. Captain Harris stood in the doorway, cap in hand. "Press conference begins in 30 minutes, ma'am." I nodded, slipping on my blazer. "Let's go." The harbor was packed. Reporters clustered near the edge of the pier, cameras flashing, microphones stretching forward like reaching hands. Employees, old and new, lined the sides, their faces uncertain but hopeful, as I Stepped out of the car, I could almost feel their whispers brushing against the wind. That's her. That's the niece they said was gone. She's back. Captain Harris walked slightly behind me, clearing the path toward the podium set against the dock, the same dock where Greg had once humiliated me. When I reached the microphone, I paused. The crowd hushed, the waves rolled, and for the first time in years, I wasn't trembling. My father, Daniel Morgan, built this company from nothing. I began, voice steady but thick with emotion. He believed in people who worked hard, who earned their place. Somewhere along the way, that legacy was twisted into greed and manipulation, but that ends today. I looked toward the rows of employees, weathered hands, wrinkled faces, people who had been loyal long before power changed hands. This company was never about yachts, suits, or family names. It was about the people who kept the engines running, the ship sailing, and the lights on. You were the heart, and you still are. Applause rippled through the crowd, hesitant at first, then rising. I caught the faces of men who had worked beside my father, proud, teary-eyed, clapping harder than anyone else. One reporter called out, "Miss Morgan, what about your uncle?" I met her gaze. My uncle will face the consequences of his actions, but this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about rebuilding what was broken, not just the company, but the trust. Flashbulb exploded like fireworks, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I felt like I belonged at that dock, not as the outcast niece, not as the quiet one watching from behind glass, but as the woman steering her own course. Later that afternoon, I walked alone along the pier where it had all begun. The air smelled of salt and memory. I could still hear Greg's laughter from that day, cruel, sharp, echoing, but now it sounded distant, small. I stopped at the exact spot where he'd said, "You're here to wave goodbye, not bored." The same boards beneath my feet creaked, but now they whispered something different. "Not anymore," I murmured. Footsteps approached from behind. I turned. Greg stood there, not in a suit this time, but in a plain windbreaker, eyes sunken, face drawn. He looked older, smaller. I had to see it, he said quietly. "The dock, the yacht, you." I didn't speak. He swallowed hard. "You won, Lily. You got everything, the company, the name, the respect. I get you were always stronger than I thought." The words sounded strange coming from him. Not an apology, not exactly, but something close to surrender. "I never wanted to destroy you," I said softly. "I just wanted the truth back." Greg nodded slowly, his eyes glinting with the kind of regret that comes too late. "Your father would have been proud. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, I let him walk away without another word. Some victories don't need witnesses. That night, the Seraphines sailed again. The city lights shimmered in the distance as the engines hummed beneath my feet. I stood at the bow, wind in my hair, watching the horizon stretch open like a promise. Captain Harris approached quietly. "Destination, ma'am." I smiled faintly. "Anywhere new, somewhere peaceful." He nodded and turned away, barking soft commands to the crew. As the yacht cut through the dark water, I looked down at my reflection in the waves. Not the woman who'd been laughed at, not the girl who lost everything, but the one who'd found herself again. The dock was behind me, the sea ahead, and for the first time I wasn't chasing revenge. I was sailing toward freedom, fade out,